Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy for the Future of Work virtual conference presented by Engagedly. This webcast has been pre-approved for a half HRCI and SHRM credit. Please be sure to attend the complete webcast in order to receive your credits. If you have any questions during the webcast, please use the Q&A box or the chat box on your Zoom controls. Thank you for joining in for this next webcast, Research Study, Engagedly's impact on employee experience and productivity in the hybrid work environment. It is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Jennifer Dole. Jennifer is an analyst, consultant, and speaker in the area of talent management technology, focused on improving the experience of how we develop, engage, and leverage our workforce at scale. She has more than 20 years of experience in the talent management industry at various Fortune 500 companies and the HR technology vendors holding consultant or executive level roles. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Jennifer Dole.
Thank you, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here. And as we've heard today, no doubt we've experienced over the last few years that our workplace is undergoing an evolution. And in fact, sometimes it might feel more like a revolution. The shift to hybrid work has required HR leaders to develop different approaches to talent management. They needed to be mindful of new employee experiences and design solutions to improve productivity in new work environments. In this session, I will share stories from several HR leaders on how Engagedly impacts the employee experience and productivity in a hybrid work environment. These stories embody the aspirations every HR department has to overcome administrative obstacles, to be less reactive and more proactive, and to transform HR into a strategic, influential agent within the organization, a true asset. Now, these aspirational stories would not be possible without the investment of time from Casey Sanders at CCM and Anna Schuring at HIMSS and Victoria Raymond at Talon. Thank you for sharing your stories. Let's dive into the key insights. There's three phrases that I want you to write down from this session: facilitated empathy, strengthened culture, unshakable partnership. As the future of work, very much unlike the past of work, continues to take hold, and organizations continue to grapple with implications of having dispersed, remote, or hybrid workforces, the onus is on HR teams to continue to develop and adapt to these new and other work paradigms. So let's dive in. 360 Insights is a research and consulting firm learning from and telling the stories of the voice of the customer. In this case, the customer is HR, and the stories are about navigating the HR tech buying process and realizing value from the solutions. We're so curious about the customer's journey. And you'll hear me refer to customers as users. I don't want to do it to be confusing, but HR leaders are customers of Engagedly and users of their solution. And for this research, my business partner, Brent Skinner, and I interviewed several HR leaders and found that users of Engagedly achieved a broad spectrum of benefits, as you can see here on the slide. And a couple things that I want to point out. We found some of the benefits comprise significant newfound efficiencies and financial savings that any organization would want and would expect from modern technology. However, with Engagedly's highly people-centric tools at their disposal, users also have the power to promote greater alignment between employees and their business. improve employee engagement, no matter what the makeup of their workforce is, and help drive career development. What we like most about Engagedly was that it provides some of the fundamental digital building blocks for HR transformation, helping users foster greater workforce agility, improve employee culture, and promote high productivity and a positive employee experience. So let's dive into those 3 key insights: facilitated empathy, strengthened culture, and unshakable partnership. I'm going to share some quotes and examples from customers, users. You get my point. So the first is the stories of Engagedly impact on employee experience. And the key insight is facilitated empathy. You can see it highlighted here in the quote. I'll read the quote. Indeed, at the customers, benefits from the deployment of Engagedly have extended well beyond concrete efficiencies and other improvements reducible to a definable number of measurements. In all organizations' experience with the platform, there's been demonstrable benefits coming in the form of facilitated empathy. Facilitated empathy. We've heard about empathy earlier today, but improvements in employee experience today must extend beyond efficiencies if you truly want to have impact. And among the outcomes that we heard from customers was improvements to employee sentiment and the sense of belonging. This is evidenced in improvements in employee relations and strengthening company values and improving the manager capability. So from an example perspective, stories that we heard around employee relations. One customer, after switching to Engagedly, told us about how they saw a significant improvement in employee experience evidenced by improvements to employee relations. Here's the before situation, and this may be familiar to many of you, but at times employees can be caught off guard by their performance rating at the end of the year, and this would lead to conflicts with management and possibly involvement within the employee relations team. Since deploying Engagedly, however, the HR leader and his team observed that employees are much better prepared for their annual reviews. And this leads to more open and productive conversations between employees and managers about performance. It reduced the conflict and the involvement of the employee relations team. So that's pretty cool. The second example we heard was really about linking values to the importance of the employee experience. And in this example, the HR leader received a lot of positive feedback from managers and others in the workforce regarding the simplicity of the solution with Engagedly and just how user-friendly it was to do their performance reviews and have their conversations and get them ready for it. And so simplicity was one of their core values. And it was super important to the HR leader to be able to work that into the solution, reinforcing the value. So they were able to design a simple solution with Engagedly that reinforced the employee experience they wanted to deliver and meet the needs of their business. And finally, the third example in this employee experience category was improving the capability of managers. And in this situation, before the company used Engagedly, managers had one-off conversations with employees. And it was really important for them to improve this, to be more systematic. Before, it was informal conversations. If they needed to be documented, they would. and these ad hoc meeting notes would go into a filing cabinet. That still exists. But with Engagedly and providing this platform, they were able to bring various parts of talent management together in one central location, and it improved the way that managers were able to prepare for these meetings. It gave them the ability to not focus on collecting data, but really focus on being empathetic in their interactions with the employees and in delivering the performance feedback. And now managers have a formalized process to do this. It's a routine and habits they've got of delivering that feedback. It's all in one location, and it's really improved the relationships. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this slide, that improvements in employee experience today must extend beyond efficiencies if you truly want to have impact. Okay, the light on my camera is going out. I apologize. If you want to have impact today on employee experience, it needs to extend beyond the efficiencies, and it has to involve empathy. So the second category we really looked at was around impact on productivity. And again, here's a quote kind of summarizing what we learned. Digital transformations here have given rise to HR transformation. I gotta move my camera out of the way. The productivity gains are immense, and customer stories especially typify the question of just what productivity gains in fact are. There is a time saving and associated dollar savings to productivity gains. But to stop there isn't what you want to be able to do. You really want to be able to get that upside, and it has a far greater long tail. It's about an investment of time to strengthen your culture. And the digital transformation has given rise to the HR transformation. And we heard examples in our research about being able to expand the business and for HR to be more strategic in their approach to working with the business. So from an expansion perspective, this customer told us about how performance management has really elevated their relationship. The priority for them was on growing the business and providing employees with professional development and career development opportunities. They wanted to be able to expand their business into new markets. And with Engagedly, and by setting challenging goals and getting quality feedback, tracking accomplishments, and being able to set all of that in motion with Engagedly, it resulted in a productivity gain, evidenced by the fact that they could increase their business offerings with the same number of employees. They didn't have to increase their headcount. And in addition to that, it was giving their current employees an opportunity to increase their career paths or try something new in the new businesses that they were evolving into. The second area is really around the strategic approach. And many companies turn to technology to help improve their performance management process, utilizing tools that allow individuals to easily track their progress and share their goals. And in this case, the HR leader told us that they were seeing significant benefits using Engagedly, particularly in the way that team members were able to approach goal setting. So instead of focusing solely on metrics and task completion, they're setting more sophisticated goals now. And these goals are allowing them to be more strategic in how they approach work. The data and analytics that are surfaced through Engagedly were able to help align individual work to organizational goals and they were able to get really pinpointed on areas of improvement because they were using the technology from Engagedly. So impact on productivity is possible. It's an investment at this point, and digital transformation has really given rise to HR transformation and its impact on the business. So I've got one more category that I want to review with you before I open it up for some questions. And why isn't this? Okay. Oh, here we go. Impact on the hybrid work environment. And so, we've got this quote here that really talks about how using technology has improved the ability to go to a hybrid work environment. And it really is delivering on what people want, which is greater engagement, connection, alignment. It's connecting people to their careers, to their managers, to the organization. And it's really forming this unshakable partnership that encourages and supports development, recognition, belongingness. And the key insight here, and I've already mentioned this, but as a future of work, very much unlike the past of work, continues to take hold, the organizations are grappling with constant change. And this is an example of constant change being the hybrid work environment, but the onus continues to be on HR to develop and adapt to these new solutions. And so the examples that we heard here were really around a process that's no longer fit for purpose or building a culture of belonging. So the story about process is no longer fit for purpose comes from an organization that was growing really rapidly with its headcount. And they decided before the pandemic that they wanted to introduce a remote staff. But you have to understand, they were still on a manual paper-based process and were filing those in filing cabinets. So it really just wasn't fit for purpose when they started going remote, and, now had to really look for a solution that would make it more effective for HR to administer this process. This organization had a great performance review process in place before. It was just on paper, and they had high adoption of this process. So what Engagedly was able to do for this organization was reduce the time it took to deliver this great process. And it continued to have high participation, but it really strengthened that partnership between employees and managers in delivering this performance reviews and feedbacks in a new way. And then finally, building a culture of belonging. This is an example of where the shift to the hybrid work environment was just a fundamental shift in their company culture. It had always been, as they described it, taboo to work from home or remotely. And now they were in a position where they needed to do that. And so what they did was use Engagedly's recognition program to really help connect people and build a culture of belonging while they were working from home. And the recognition program was really instrumental in connecting people through technology, where they were able to use the engagement point system and get points for praise or recognition. And it really connected people during this uncertainty time of the pandemic. And what they were most pleased by is that they were able to design a process that really worked for them. And so we have talked about a lot of things today. The research has a lot more in it than what I've shared with you, but I wanted to get at some of those amazing stories. And so we've talked about employee experience and facilitated empathy. And you know that improvements to employee experience today must extend beyond efficiencies if you really want to have the impact. We talked about productivity and how it is a time investment to strengthen your culture, and using and embracing digital transformation can give rise to the HR transformation. And finally, hybrid work. This is going to be just an example of change that HR is helping to drive. And so the onus is on you to continue to develop and adapt to these and other areas for the new working paradigm. So thank you for listening. I've put up a picture of the research that we did with Engagedly, and there is a long link there to be able to access it, but it's super easy once you're on our website at 360insights.com. So now I would love to answer some questions and ask Jackie to join me here. So I'm going to stop sharing so that we can do that.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have the link to the research piece in the chat. So if you move over to there, you'll see the link to the 360 Insights for anybody who's interested in downloading that. And we have a couple of questions from the audience. Andrea, I'll get started with her questions, and I have a few of my own if we can get to those. How did Engagedly improve the employee experience in receiving performance reviews? Does Engagedly give immediate coaching?
So I can certainly speak for what the HR leaders experienced in using Engagedly. And it certainly did improve the employee experience when receiving performance reviews. And what's important to remember and reflect on is that each of these customers is starting from a different point. Some of them had performance reviews in place already with other providers that were very complex. Some of the customers had paper reviews. Some of the customers had no review at all. So being able to take, by using Engagedly, they were able to create a process that worked for their organization. And sometimes, yes, it did mean a performance review. And it also put HR into a position where they could be a coach to a manager, helping to increase performance, helping to give feedback. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And the next question Andrea also had was, how would small businesses benefit from Engagedly?
Yes. So the 3 customers that we interviewed were all small businesses. And again, starting from different points, but what they were able to do is reduce the time to administer the task of performance reviews. They were able to increase participation in the performance review process and increase the capability of the managers in giving the feedback, all by having one solution available that people are regularly using to set goals. And setting goals was one of the areas that had the most impact for these small businesses, because people could see how their contributions impacted the contributions of the business.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of questions of my own.
Sure, Jackie.
What are some of the outcomes realized by Engagedly from these customers?
Yeah, and it hits on some of the things that I just spoke about. But, most importantly, HR leaders were able to design a process around what worked for their business. And they found Engagedly to be very flexible in helping them do that and consulting on the design of those processes. And that's not something that they found from other vendors. A second area of outcomes is what I already spoke about regarding the visibility of goals, and that there was great improvement in breaking down silos when organizations had visibility into the goals, what the company was trying to achieve, and how they could contribute to it. One customer shared the story that they went from about 15% of their population having set goals to 80% of their population having set goals. So that was a big move. The other thing I wanted to talk about was how it reduces the administrative burden on HR to set up these tasks. So one organization switched from a much larger vendor to Engagedly, and they had a very complex task that took about 40 hours to set up. And with Engagedly, they reduced it to about 10 hours to set up and administer. So that was a huge productivity gain for HR in using a much simpler task through Engagedly. And then finally, the last one that we heard a lot about was the manager capability and improving that. And managers had more access to have a great conversation with their employees, to provide feedback, to do that more often. And employees were giving them feedback in surveys saying that, hey, our managers are getting better at doing this. So some great benefits and outcomes that the customers realized.
Definitely. So what is next on the talent agenda for these customers?
Yeah, great question. And we always like to find out what people are going to be doing next. And hands down across the board with these customers, it was about learning and upskilling for professional growth. And that was really kind of an outcome of the conversations that managers are having now, in that they're able to get to pinpointed, as one person said, improvement areas. And now HR wants to be able to offer opportunities to learn and improve.
That's
and
fantastic.
We saw that across the board.
What are some of the other outcomes? I already asked that one. Any other questions that we have from our audience members? We do have a few more minutes for today's webinar. Can you tell us a little bit more about the customers you interviewed? You said they were small businesses.
Yes, small businesses. So one was a health insurance company with about 700 people throughout the United States. That was Christian Care Ministry with Casey Sanders, who is the director of Total Rewards. The second participant was a nonprofit organization with about 260 people in its global workforce, and that was HIMSS and Anna Sherling, who's a senior talent manager. And finally, we spoke to a software consulting firm with about 130 employees across the United States. That's Talon. And we spoke with Victoria Raymond, who is an HR generalist.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's see.
There's just one last thing that I wanted to comment on. We've talked a lot about the employee experience, and we've talked a lot about the manager's experience, but I also want to say that using Engagedly helped elevate HR's reputation in an organization. And we heard that over and over again. They're no longer seen as a cost center, but as an area that's really helping to develop and invest in employee development. They have become coaches to the managers. They are acting as strategic talent advisors. And each one of the HR leaders that we spoke to spoke about the personal gains that they have experienced in building their area of expertise in new areas across HR. So I just thought that was worth mentioning too. And we are at time. I think there's one more question that I see from Catherine. And do we know of if any organizations with under 50 employees have successfully used this product? And I would leave that up to Engagedly to ask. I know the companies that we spoke to were a little bit bigger, but I certainly can see how this would help. And again, it's the same benefits of aligning goals, having information in one place, having an automated process, being able to track history, being able to surface data and insights. And it really sets you up for growth with process that's fit for purpose versus having to rewind like some of the customers we spoke to.
Exactly. Yes, and Engagedly does work for companies with employees under 50. There are a lot of examples that we can give and use cases on our websites, and it integrates easily with other software that you might already have in place, especially for smaller organizations who are looking to be cost conscious. That is going to be important as well. Thank you, Catherine, for your question. And if you want more referral to any other if you would like example for a case study, I can send you one later.
Well, Jackie, thanks for helping me facilitate those questions that we had. They were really great. I invite all of you to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Jennifer Dole, with 360 Insights. I'm very active out there. I love to hear those customer stories, those HR stories. So please feel free to connect with me and take a look at our research on 360insights.com. We've done some great work with Engagedly, not just this research, but some other research pieces too.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you,
everyone.
Bye-bye.